Hi guys. By making this video, I'm assuming that you know Highlander's basic moveset and punishes. This sort of guide will be separated into multiple videos answering different questions, helping on certain matchups, etc. In this video, I'll try to cover one of the most common techs and tactics. Please note that I'm far from being the best Highlander player, but it's safe to say I've got my experience with him. There are also other guides linked in the description that in my opinion are a goldmine of knowledge. This video is just to go over what my friends and subscribers have asked me about. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's cover the basic tech that every Highlander player should know. Wave dashing. We've got to start with Highlander's most iconic mechanic, wave dashing. But why is this mechanic useful? Highlander has extremely short recovery on his dashes while in his stance. This makes him capable of being extremely mobile while fighting. A common playstyle is to dodge your opponent's attacks and punish with a kick, if they change into a heavy. Or interrupt attacks with your fast offensive lights. Highlander's recovery dodges are 400 milliseconds. But by swapping your guard between your dodges, you can shorten them to 200 milliseconds. That being the case, Highlander can avoid almost every mix-up in the game, except for guard breaks and undodgeables, of course. This tech is not the most viable, since if you make one wrong read, you get kicked back to your defensive stance and your opponent gets the upper hand. Thankfully, there are ways to deal with this, such as stance cancelling. Stance cancels will become a must after reaching a certain level. It's mostly used to catch an opponent attempting to interrupt your offensive stance and allows you to continue your own offense. There are multiple ways to cancel, and every one of them has their uses. So there's the basic cancel. While in offensive stance, you can switch back to defensive stance by just pressing cancel. Nothing complicated, but note that there's not much utility to cancelling this way, as it gives you a recovery where you can't block, parry, or counter guard break. Now for the real cancel. You can avoid that short recovery by swapping your guard and pressing cancel at almost the same time. It's not hard to replicate, but implementing it into your gameplay and consistently converting it into parries is going to take a lot of time. You can do it after almost any attack to either shorten your recovery even more or get back into a safer position when you're low on stamina. If you remember correctly, wave dashing also uses your guard switch, which means that you can also cancel while doing it. The wave cancel. Wave cancelling is extremely useful for baiting your opponent into attacking you. It's just a regular wave dash, but instead of pressing dodge again after your guard switch, press cancel immediately. Please note that if you press cancel too early, you'll be stuck in your stance for a second and you'll be vulnerable to attacks. Too late and you'll either just make a basic cancel or do an accidental stamp switch. Speaking of which, stamp switching. If you paid attention whilst I was showing the different cancels, you may have noticed that it uses stamina. But what if you're low on stamina and you want to convert safely into defensive stance? If you've been playing Highlander for a small amount of time, you may have encountered a bug where it kicks you out of your offensive stance. This is an issue, since Highlander's option select was fixed. Thankfully for us, it can be used to our advantage. As far as I know, you can perform it after an offensive light or a wave dash. After pressing light, swap your guard and release the heavy button after a small amount of time. You can also just press cancel at the same moment. For the stamp switch with a wave dash, dodge, swap your guard, and release heavy after the same amount of time as before. Doing it after an offensive light is safer in my opinion because the frame advantage gives you enough time to get out before your opponent can throw anything. Cancelling is not a necessity in every fight, but being consistent with all your techs will be the key to becoming a better Highlander. Allow yourself some time in training with this, it's really worth your time. Emote tech. Highlander's offensive emote is really useful. It hides guard switches, can bait a reaction, or be used to cover a cancel. If people tend to dodge your kick early, you can catch their dodge by emoting, dashing forward, and kicking. Doing this will delay the kick enough to catch early dodges. The emote can also be used to confuse players with fast reactions. However, to explain all of this in full detail, I'm going to have to make a separate video. Back dodge tech. After mixing up your opponent, if you back dodge, most players will try to maintain distance by dodging forward. This gives you a free kick if you react fast enough. This should work against every character, but if you mess up the timing by a little bit, you'll only catch the heavy ones. In my opinion, this is all of the tech that every Highlander should master to get better. The Highlander that can stay in offensive stance the longest is always the stronger Highlander. Essentially what I'm trying to say is use your offensive stance as much as possible. Don't spam, and enjoy yourself. Now it's your turn to experiment with all the tech I've bestowed onto you, and create your own way of dealing with opponents.